Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom, and we're going to continue to talk about this sad, tragic news that's broken in the last few minutes, that Derek Draper, the former political advisor and husband of TV presenter Kate Garraway, has died at the age of 56. He had been suffering from COVID for nearly 4 years. He spent a year in hospital and was taken ill again, or suffered further complications just before Christmas. Well, we're joined by political commentators Matthew Stadlen and Russell Quirk. Good morning to you both. Matthew, let's just start with you, because we have kept referring to Derek Draper as Kate Garraway's husband, but he was a successful man in his own right.
He was a really important part of the New Labour project. It's interesting because I started my career as a producer, and as a TV producer, you come across so many people in your daily and sometimes nightly work. And in both Derek's case and Kate's case, I just remember how lovely they both were in person. He came across to me when I was producing the old BBC One show this week as a really nice man. And he was an important plank in that hugely successful period for the Labour Party. Kate, I mean, as you say, he's become known as Kate Garraway's husband. He was so much more than that in his own right. But Kate herself has, I think, been an inspiration, not just to people like us within the industry, but far wider than that. She's been incredibly brave, she's been incredibly strong, and she just stands out as a real inspiration and a really good human being. I cared for my father for 2 or 3 months last year before he died. And it is a difficult experience to go through for anyone. And she has been there, it seems, by his side, through thick and thin, holding down a high-profile job, being a mother. And there will be people who have cared for their families up and down Britain, many of them watching today, who will be knowing exactly what she's going through.
Yeah, I've got a quick email here about Derek and Kate. Margaret says, "I've cried with you this morning when I heard the news about Derek. Kate has been a tower of strength all through his illness, and my heart aches for her. The only comfort she can take from this is that he's not suffering anymore. Bless you, Derek."
I mean, I remember when Russell Kate did I'm a Celebrity back at the end of 2019, and Derek was so proud of her, and he flew out to Australia with the children, Darcy and Billy, to welcome her when she came out. They were on top of the world, and then barely 3 months later, this happened to him.
Yeah, the perfect
COVID.
family. What a young age to die at, 56. I say that as a man of the same age, very, very young. And yes, the burden, the juggling that she's had to do over the last 4 years, career, family, caring for him, obviously very, very passionately, enthusiastically, and
she would turn
avidly.
up. She would turn up to work because myself and several of my colleagues here worked with Kate. She would turn up to work at Good Morning Britain at 3 o'clock in the morning, having had no sleep because she had been looking after Derek round the clock.
And she'd still do this with a smile on her face.
And she would turn up and she would still do the job brilliantly.
Yeah. No, it's very, very tragic indeed, very sad.
Matthew, you mentioned you looked after your father, did you say?
Yeah.
What kind of toll does that take on someone when you're seeing through the last days of someone you love so dearly, such as your dad? What kind of effect does that have on you?
I was really lucky to be able to do that because I'm self-employed. It meant I had a degree of flexibility. So I could come and do my journalism and my presenting and my interviewing and so forth at the same time as being with Dad 5 times a day. But for my mum, she lived with him. I mean, they started going out when they were 16 and 17. And so she was there round the clock. I mean, I would be able to take over in the evening so she could get some rest. But having carers in your kitchen, that being the absolute focus of the household, of course it takes its toll. For me, emotionally, watching someone die when you love them as much as I love my dad, he was a sort of central figure in my life, in my adulthood as well as my childhood, is enormously difficult. But if you are able to give what we were lucky enough to give, it definitely helps them and it helps you through that process. But nothing prepares you for the moment of watching your father die, as I did, watching someone take their last breath. And I think Kate said in her Instagram message that she was there in Derek's final hours holding his hand.
Yes, she was by his side.
That means so much to those of us who are lucky enough to be there.
The other thing we should remember, of course, is that Kate and her family have had to live through this through the lens of the public eye, you know, because they're in the media. So that, some might say, at some points, that intrusion in terms of the press, you know, wanting updates and obviously seeing it as a newsworthy thing is also something that obviously Kate's had to, and her children have had to juggle with at the same time.
But at the same time, her being so incredibly open about his condition, I mean, because there was reports that he was the nation's longest suffering COVID patient because he spent 13 months in hospital. But by being so open, she helped so many others whose loved ones are suffering with long COVID.
Huge support, hasn't she, from you know, from friends and people in the media.
It's a reminder of how dangerous COVID was. And I mean, it's still not a disease for some people to muck around with, but it took a great toll. And he is perhaps the most high-profile example of that. Just to say something else, when, and I don't know whether you would have described him as terminally ill, but in the case of my father and many people in the country right now going through this, he was terminally ill. And this was this very strange experience of trying to keep someone alive, but knowing that they're going to die.
Yeah. Matthew, thank you. Our thoughts are with Kate Garraway and her family today. Derek Draper, her husband, has passed away at the age of 56.